I want to explain why net worth often begins to accelerate after the first $100,000. Not because $100,000 is a magic number, not because life suddenly becomes easy, not because you can retire, stop working, or become careless. It accelerates because the structure of the game changes. Before that point, most of the progress comes from your labor. You work, you save, you sacrifice, you control spending. You push the boulder uphill with your own hands after that point. The money itself begins to contribute in a way you can finally see. That is the turning point. The first phase of wealth is earned income becoming savings. The second phase is savings becoming capital. The third phase is capital creating more capital. Most people never reach the third phase because they quit during the first one. And the first one is slow, it is boring, it is frustrating, it feels unfair because the effort is large and the visible result is small. That is exactly why most people fail. They do not fail because the math does not work. They fail because the math takes time before it becomes emotionally obvious. So let me start with the simplest demonstration. Imagine I give you two offers. Offer number one, I give you $1 million right now. Offer number two, I give you 1 penny right now, and every day for 30 days, that penny doubles. Which one would you take? The emotional mind wants the $1 million. It is immediate, it is visible, it is certain. A penny sounds ridiculous. A penny does not even buy anything meaningful. The brain says, why would I ever choose the penny? But the penny is the better choice. On day 1, you have 1 cent. On day 2, 2 cents. Day 3, 4 cents. Day 4, 8 cents. Day 5, 16 cents. By day 10, you have only a little over $5. At that point, the $1 million looks like the obvious winner. If you were watching the process, you might feel foolish. You might think, I chose the wrong offer. You might look at the person with the $1 million and believe they won. That is how compounding often feels in the beginning. It feels like nothing is happening. But then the curve begins to bend. By day 21, the penny has become more than $1,000. By day 28, it has passed $1 million. By day 30, it has become more than $5 million. The same penny, the same doubling rule, the same process. But time and base size transform the result. That is the lesson. Compounding does not feel powerful at the start because the base is too small. Then the base becomes meaningful and the same percentage growth begins producing real money. That is why the first $100,000 matters so much. Getting your net worth to $100,000 is like reaching the part of the penny example where the numbers are still not spectacular, but the curve is about to become very different. The first 10 days are slow, the next 10 days are less slow, the final 10 days explode. Most people want the final 10 days without living through the first 20. That is not how the machine works. The first $100,000 is the price of admission to the part of the game where your money begins to work beside you in a visible way. Now let us take it out of the penny example and put it into real money. Suppose you save and invest $10,000 every year. Suppose you earn 10% annually. We are using round numbers to understand the structure, not to promise a guaranteed result. Markets do not move in clean straight lines. There will be down years, flat years, and years, when the returns are far better than expected. But the simplified math shows the mechanism. In year 1, you save $10,000 and invest it. At the end of the year, you have $10,000 in year 2. That $10,000 earns a return, and you add another $10,000. Now the balance is around $21,000 in year 3. You have more capital earning money, and you add another $10,000. The account grows again at first. Most of the growth is still coming from you. You are doing the heavy lifting, you are saving the money, you are choosing not to spend it. You are pushing income into assets. That is why the early phase is hard. In this example, getting to the first $100,000 takes about 8 years. That is a long time for a human being. 8 years of saving, 8 years of resisting lifestyle inflation, 8 years of watching other people spend freely while you keep building the base. And when you look at the breakdown, most of that first $100,000 came from your own effort. Around $72,000 of it came from money you worked for and saved. The rest came from investment growth. That is why the first $100,000 is the hardest. It is not mostly the market helping you yet, it is mostly you building the machine, but then the machine begins to help. The second $100,000 may take about 4 years. The third $100,000 may take about 3 years later when the base gets larger. Your net worth can increase by $100,000 in a single year. Then eventually it can increase by $100,000 in less than a year. That is not magic. It is the same percentage return applied. 10% on $10,000 is $1,000. 10% on $100,000 is $10,000. 10% on $1 million is $100,000. The return is the same. The result is very different. This is why it is easier to make money when you already have money. It feels unfair because in many ways it is unfair. The person with capital has an advantage over the person without capital. The rich stay rich partly because their capital can produce income, optionality, and access that people without capital do not have. That does not mean the person without capital has no path. It means the first objective is to create capital as quickly and intelligently as possible. That is why the first $100,000 should be treated as a serious mission. If you delay it, you delay the acceleration. If you never get there, you never experience the wealth explosion. This is the part people do not like to hear. The first $100,000 will usually not arrive from luck. For most people, it will not arrive from one big trade. It will not arrive from guessing the next stock. It will not arrive from a miracle investment. It will come from work, savings, discipline, income growth, and time. That may not be exciting, but it is true. Most of the first $100,000 comes from money you personally earned and kept. That is why every dollar matters more in the early phase. When you are building from $0 to $100,000, $1,000 saved is not trivial. It is 1% of the target. It is future compounding. It is fuel for the machine. A recurring expense that wastes $200 a month is not just $200. It is $2,400 per year. It is money that could have gone into the base. It is future investment growth that never happens. This is why the early phase requires sharper choices, not because you should hate life, not because every enjoyable purchase is evil, but because the early dollars have more future work to do. The dollar you invest early can compound for many years. The dollar you waste early is gone forever, and so is the compounding it could have produced. That is opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is one of the most powerful invisible forces in finance. You do not receive a bill that says, "Here is the wealth you failed to build." You simply arrive in the future with less. That is why people underestimate the cost of small decisions repeated for years. Now, what is the actual instruction for someone below $100,000 in net worth? You already know the basic idea. Spend less than you make, live within your means, save aggressively, invest consistently. Avoid high-interest debt. Do not let lifestyle inflation consume your income. But knowing is not the same as doing. The gap between knowing and doing is where most financial failure lives. People know they should save, they know they should invest, they know credit card debt is bad, they know they should increase income, they know they should not waste money on status purchases, but life tests them. A raise comes and spending rises, a friend invites them on a trip. A car looks attractive, food delivery becomes easy, subscriptions accumulate, a new phone feels necessary, they tell themselves they will start next month, then next month becomes next year, and the first $100,000 keeps moving further away. This is why discipline matters. The first $100,000 is not only a financial milestone, it is a behavioral test. It tests whether you can convert income into assets instead of converting income into consumption. It tests whether you can delay gratification. It tests whether you can keep going when the progress feels small. It tests whether you can stay with the process before the process rewards you emotionally. Most people do not want to hear that sacrifice is required, but it is. The question is whether the sacrifice is intelligent. Making sacrifices is not enjoyable in the moment. It is short-term pain for long-term freedom. But the pain is not pointless. You are buying the right to have your money work for you. You are buying time. You are buying optionality. You are buying the ability to survive problems without collapsing. You are buying the future compounding curve. That is a rational trade. Now, there is an important danger in the way people talk about saving. Many people focus almost entirely on cutting expenses. Cutting expenses is useful, but it has limits. You can only cut so much. You need a place to live. You need food. You need transportation. You need utilities. You need insurance. You need basic stability in an environment where the cost of living has risen so much. Many people already feel that they are spending only on essentials and still have little left to save. So if you focus only on cutting, you may reach a wall. The equation has two sides. Income minus expenses equals surplus. If expenses cannot be reduced enough, then income must rise. This is where many people avoid the harder truth. You must work on earning more. That may mean changing jobs, negotiating better pay, learning a higher value skill, starting a side business, freelancing, selling something valuable, moving to a role with a better income path, building credentials, learning technology, learning sales, improving communication, becoming more valuable in the marketplace. There is a limit to how much you can cut. There is much more room to increase the value you create. This does not mean income growth is easy. It is not. If it were easy, everyone would do it. But for many people, getting to $100,000 faster depends more on growing income than on cutting one more small expense. The best strategy is both: control expenses and increase income. The person who cuts expenses but never increases income may move slowly. The person who increases income but spends every raise may stay broke at a higher lifestyle level. The person who increases income and keeps expenses controlled creates a widening gap. That gap is the source of wealth. The gap becomes savings. Savings become investments. Investments become capital. Capital begins compounding. This is the machine. Now, the next principle is to start investing early, even if you do not have much money. Many people say they will start investing when they have more. That sounds sensible, but it is often wrong. If you wait until you have more money, you postpone the habit, the learning, and the compounding. The early phase of investing will be slow and boring no matter when you start. If you start with $100, it is boring. If you wait 5 years and start with $1,000, it is still boring. The boring phase cannot be skipped. It must be passed through. The sooner you begin, the sooner you move through it. Small early investments teach you how markets behave. They teach you how you react when prices fall. They teach you how dividends work. They teach you how brokerage accounts work. They teach you how retirement accounts work. They make financial education real. Without money at stake, investing can feel abstract. With even a small amount invested, your brain begins to pay attention. That is important. You cannot learn to swim by watching videos forever. At some point, you must enter the water, but you should enter shallow water first. That is what small early investing does. It gives you skin in the game without exposing you to ruin. Now, where should you invest? The simplest starting point for many people is a retirement account or a brokerage account using low-cost diversified index funds or ETFs. If your employer offers a 401k, 403b, or similar plan with a match, that match is extremely valuable. An employer match is one of the rare forms of free money available to ordinary workers. If your employer matches part of what you contribute, the immediate return can be very high. If you can capture it, you generally should tax. Advantaged accounts matter because taxes are a major drag on compounding. A traditional retirement account may reduce taxable income today. A Roth IRA may allow qualified withdrawals to be tax-free in the future. The best choice depends on your income, tax bracket, age, eligibility, and expectations. But the larger principle is simple. Use the structures that help your money compound more efficiently. Taxes are like friction. The less unnecessary friction your money experiences, the more can remain in the machine. For the investments themselves, I would keep it simple. Broad index funds, low-cost ETFs, simple mutual funds, if they have low fees and fit the account. The first $100,000 should not depend on you being a genius stock picker. It should depend on savings rate, consistency, low costs, and time. That is a much more reliable foundation. If you try to turn the first $100,000 mission into a hunt for the next 10-bagger, you may destroy the base before it exists. That is a bad trade. The job is not to get rich quickly. The job is to build the compounding base. Once the base exists, more choices appear. Now, the source strategy uses 2 prongs. The first prong is investing in the stock market. The second prong is saving for a down payment to buy a home. That can be a reasonable structure if buying a home makes sense for your life. But that condition is important. A home is not always the right choice. If you do not know where you want to live, if your job requires mobility, if the monthly payment would make you fragile, or if the local housing market is badly overpriced relative to renting, buying may not be wise. But if you have found an area where you want to settle and you can buy within your means, a home can help build net worth. The reason is leverage plus inflation. Suppose you save $40,000 for a down payment on a $400,000 home. You are controlling a $400,000 asset with $40,000 of your own capital plus debt. If the home rises 10% in value, it increases by $40,000. The property moves from $400,000 to $440,000. That $40,000 gain is large relative to your down payment. This is how leverage can accelerate wealth, but leverage is not free. It cuts both ways. If the home falls 10%, your equity can be hit hard. If repairs arrive, you must pay. If insurance rises, you must pay. If property taxes rise, you must pay. If you need to sell quickly, transaction costs can hurt. If you cannot afford the monthly payment comfortably, the house becomes a source of stress rather than wealth. So real estate should be used with respect. The point is not to buy any house at any price. The point is that a home purchased intelligently can be one of the ways to build the first meaningful net worth base. While saving for a down payment, the money should usually be treated differently from long-term investment money if you need the down payment in the next few years. It should not be exposed to major market volatility. A high-yield savings account at a reputable financial institution can make sense. If interest rates are around 4 or 5%, That is a reasonable return for short-term safe money. The goal of down payment money is not maximum return. The goal is safety, liquidity, and availability. Do not chase strange high-yield schemes because they offer a little more when money has a near-term purpose. The return of the money is more important than the return on the money. That principle can protect you from many mistakes. Now, let us talk about why the first $100,000 changes psychology. When your net worth is small, every problem feels bigger. A car repair can feel like a crisis, a medical bill can feel like a setback that destroys months of progress, a job change can feel terrifying. You have little margin when you begin building real net worth. The world does not become risk-free, but the risk profile changes. You have options, you have a buffer, you have invested capital, you have proof that you can keep money. You start thinking more like an owner. This identity shift is very important before you build capital. You may think of money mainly as something to spend or something needed to survive. After you build capital, you start seeing money as a system. Money can protect, money can buy time, money can produce income, money can compound, money can create choices. That is the mindset shift that separates consumers from owners. A consumer asks, "What can I buy with this money?" An owner asks, "What can this money become if I put it into the right system?" That is the difference. The first $100,000 trains that thinking. It teaches you to see every dollar differently. It teaches you that money kept and invested has a future. It teaches you that your decisions today have a curve attached to them. This is why the process matters as much as the number. If somebody hands you $100,000 before you have built the habits to manage it, you may lose it. If you build it yourself, you become the kind of person who can build the next one faster. You learn discipline, you learn patience, you learn the difference between income and wealth. You learn that high earnings do not matter if everything is spent. You learn that wealth is what you keep and grow. Those lessons are priceless. Now, what can destroy the first $100,000 mission? High interest debt is the first danger. Credit card debt is compounding in reverse. If your credit card charges 20% and your investments may return 10% over time, the debt is working against you faster than your assets are likely working for you. Paying off high interest debt can be like earning a guaranteed return equal to the interest avoided. Do not let negative compounding fight positive compounding. The second danger is lifestyle inflation. Many people make more money and still do not build wealth because every increase in income gets absorbed by a higher standard of living. New car, better apartment, more delivery food, more travel, more subscriptions, more clothes, more small upgrades. The person feels richer but owns very little more. Income rose, net worth did not. That is a system failure. The third danger is speculative shortcuts. Because the first $100,000 is slow, many people try to accelerate it through gambling options. They do not understand meme stocks, crypto leverage, hot tips, day trading, private deals. They have not analyzed. They are trying to skip the boring phase. But the boring phase is where the base is built. If you take reckless risks with money that is supposed to become your foundation, you may have to start over. That is a very expensive mistake. The fourth danger is waiting for perfect conditions. There is always a reason to wait. The market seems too high, the economy seems unstable, politics seem uncertain, inflation seems dangerous. Rates are moving, housing is expensive, stocks feel risky, but waiting for a risk-free world means waiting forever. You do not need perfect conditions. You need a process that can survive imperfect conditions. Dollar cost averaging into broad investments can help. Automatic contributions can help. Keeping an emergency fund can help. Avoiding leverage can help. That is how you invest in an uncertain world. Now, the practical path looks like this. First, calculate your net worth, assets minus liabilities, cash bank accounts, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, home equity, if you own property. Other assets you would conservatively count, then subtract credit cards, student loans, car loans, personal loans, and mortgage debt. Do not guess. Know the number. Second, set $100,000 as a real milestone, not a fantasy, not a wish, a project. Third, create surplus. Cut spending, that does not matter. Increase income through skills, job moves, negotiation, or side income. Fourth, automate the surplus, send money into retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, and savings accounts before it can disappear into lifestyle. Fifth, invest. Simply use broad low-cost funds or ETFs for the long-term money. Do not turn the foundation into a speculative experiment. Sixth, save for a down payment separately if home ownership fits your life. Keep that money safe and liquid. Seventh, review progress regularly, but do not obsess over every market move. You are building a system, not reacting to noise. That is the process. Now, let us speak honestly about time. If you save $10,000 per year, that is about $833 per month. For some people, that is very hard. For others, it is possible with discipline. For some, it is not possible until income rises. Do not use shame as a strategy. Use math. If you can only save $200 per month, start there and work on increasing the gap. If you can save $500, do it. If you can save $1,000, do it. The specific number matters less than the direction and consistency at the beginning. But over time, the savings rate must become meaningful. Small amounts build the habit, larger amounts build the base faster. The sooner you get to $100,000, the sooner the money begins doing more of the work. That is the reason for urgency. Now, some people will ask whether they should invest or save for a house first. The answer depends on time horizon and purpose. Money needed soon for a down payment should not be treated like long-term stock market money. Long-term retirement money should be invested in assets that can grow. You may need both tracks, a retirement track, a down payment track, a liquidity track. Mixing them creates problems. If you put down payment money into stocks and the market falls, your home purchase may be delayed. If you keep all retirement money in savings because you might want a house someday, you may lose years of compounding. Each dollar needs a job. Short-term money needs safety. Long-term money needs growth. Emergency money needs liquidity. That is how you organize capital. Now, what happens after you reach $100,000? You do not stop. You protect the base. You keep investing. You keep increasing income. You keep controlling lifestyle. You diversify intelligently. You avoid letting confidence become arrogance. Reaching $100,000 is not permission to spend it down. It is proof that the system works. So keep the system. The next $100,000 should come faster because the base is now larger. That is the reward for not quitting. And when you eventually see your net worth rise by amounts that used to take years of work, you will understand what compounding really is. It is not a motivational slogan, it is a machine. But the machine has to be built. That is your job. The machine will not build itself. Now, the larger lesson is about ownership. If you only earn and spend, you remain dependent on labor forever. If you earn, save, and invest, you gradually convert labor into ownership. Ownership is what changes the future. Ownership of businesses through stocks, ownership of broad markets through index funds, ownership of a home, if appropriate, ownership of assets that can rise with time, ownership of skills that increase income, ownership of your own financial system. The first $100,000 is often the first clear sign that you have begun crossing from pure labor to ownership. That is why it is so important, not because the number itself is magical, because the behavior and the base together change the trajectory. Now, I want to end with the truth that is both hard and encouraging. Getting your first $100,000 is difficult. It requires work, it requires sacrifice, it requires income growth, it requires spending control, it requires patience, it requires investing before it feels exciting, it requires continuing when the account still looks small, but it is possible. And once you get there, the game gets easier. Not easy, easier. The second $100,000 comes faster. The third comes faster. The capital begins helping. Your confidence grows, your options expand, your identity changes, your financial life begins to move from linear to exponential. That is the wealth explosion. It comes after the grind, not before it. So if you are below $100,000, do not be discouraged by the slow beginning. Expect it, respect it, push through it. Build the base, save aggressively, increase income, invest simply, use retirement accounts, use the employer match if available, save for a home only if it fits your life. Keep short-term money safe, do not gamble with the foundation, do not quit in the boring phase, trust the math, trust the process. The curve is slow at first because it is supposed to be. Then, if you stay with it long enough, it changes. And that change can alter the entire direction of your life.